Now the only one left was the final boss called Emperor of Destruction. Several seconds later, once the smoke curtain disappeared, it appeared. While its body was surrounded by suffocating and malevolent energy, it stomped on the ground, unsheathed its sword, and with a piercing gaze began to stare at Lu Fan, calling him ignorant. At that moment, a system window appeared to inform Lu Fan that the current number of undead soldiers was 1. The boss gained momentum, took a big leap, and prepared to attack. Lu Fan activated the ability called Dragon Armor, which allowed him to transform his arm into a dragon claw. Its power depended on the black dragon. Once the ability was activated, his hands transformed into dragon claws. While his body was surrounded by an intense aura, he extended his hands towards it and with a smile, gave Xiaoyu the order to prepare for attack. Upon hearing his command, Xiaoyu extended her claws to the sides and began staring at the boss with an aggressive gaze. It attacked Lu Fan using all its strength with the intention of ending his life, but without much effort. He blocked the attack using the dragon claws. While it was distracted attacking, Lu Fan gave Xiaoyu the order to attack. Upon hearing the command, she used the ability called Annihilation of All Things. This ability allowed the destructive dragon to flap its wings, releasing 4 fire tornadoes that caused great damage to the affected targets. She spread her wings to the sides and began to flap them, creating intense and powerful flames that sent the boss flying backwards. It was somewhat surprised and couldn't help but wonder what this ability was. Its body shot backwards, but quickly, it plunged its sword into the ground and stopped its body in motion. Once it stopped its body abruptly, it looked at its hand and saw that slowly its power was leaving its body. Upon seeing this, it couldn't help but be shocked and wonder why its power was leaving its body. The power that was leaving its body was heading towards the ring that Lu Fan wore on his finger. He began to show it the ring and with a smile asked if it had noticed that little by little it was becoming weaker. At that moment, a system window appeared to inform Lu Fan that the morning aura was in effect. The ring that Lu Fan was wearing was the rare quality morning ring. The requirement to use this ring was that the user had to be level 15. This ring granted 57 spirit points, 21 stamina points, and 12 strength points. As the morning ring slowly drained the boss's life force, it reached out its hand towards Lu Fan and couldn't help but call him scum who used despicable tricks. He began to look at the boss with an aggressive gaze and asked Xiaoyu to use the second stage of her ability. Xiaoyu spread her wings to the sides, started looking towards the sky and roaring. Then she used the ability called Everything Burns second stage, which allowed her to flap her wings, creating several fire tornadoes to generate a violent explosion. She then began to flap her wings, creating several fire tornadoes, which started advancing towards the boss. In the blink of an eye, the tornadoes exploded near it, causing its body to be thrown backwards. Its body was thrown towards the throne. Quickly, it swiftly planted both legs on the ground, stopped its body in motion, and with a murderous look, prepared itself to launch another attack. For its bad luck, Lu Fan was not going to give it another chance. In the blink of an eye, he unsheathed the dagger, grabbed it with both hands, gained momentum, emerged from the flames towards it, preparing to attack by surprise. It tried to react and block the attack, but it was in vain. Lu Fan forcefully stabbed it in the chest with the dagger, causing its body to collide against the throne. Lu Fan's attack was so powerful that even the dagger pierced through the stone throne. In a matter of seconds, the boss lost its life and a system window appeared to inform Lu Fan that the current number of undead soldiers was 0. As a reward, Xiaoyu reached level 17 and Lu Fan reached level 22. He approached the throne, placed one leg on the arm of the throne, then placed one hand on the shoulder of the boss's corpse, grabbed the dagger with his other hand, and forcefully pulled it out of its chest. He began to stare at the corpse, sighed, and told Xiaoyu that everything was over. At the same time, in the surveillance room, everyone was left speechless as they couldn't believe that Lu Fan had defeated the boss. While Director Bai was looking at the screen with a surprised look, he revealed to the others that in these 30 years, no one had managed to score 1 million points. The director of the first middle school was so shocked that he simply remained silent. Shanghai crossed his arms and told Director Bai that now his school's reputation was going to skyrocket. Lu Fan turned his back on the boss's corpse and began to move away from the area. He rested the dagger on his shoulder, put his hand in his pants pocket, turned his head towards Xiaoyu, and explained that they had already passed the trial, so now they could go back home. He also asked her if she missed his aunt's food. Xiaoyu started flying and followed Lu Fan. She approached him, closed her eyes, and with a pleasant smile replied yes. A system window appeared to inform him that the floor 100 had been successfully cleared. Then, another system window appeared and congratulated Lu Fan for successfully completing the Nightmare level trial in the southern province. At that moment, a chest began to appear in front of Lu Fan. He simply put his hands in his pants pockets and silently watched the chest. Inside the chest were several objects. The first one was a blue book called The Wrath of the Ice Dragon King. This was a rare quality item and fell into the category of skill books. The only professions that could use this item were dragon masters and linguistic wizards. The requirement to use it was to be level 20. After using it, one could learn a magical skill called the Wrath of the Ice Dragon King. This skill would freeze the area where the target was located, causing damage and adding slowing and freezing effects. The duration of the effect, the amount of damage, and the range could vary depending on the duration of the guide. He had thought that he would only have control skills after reaching level 30 in the second transformation, but now he realized that he could coordinate with Xiaoya's output skills. The second object was a ring called Spirit Wind Ring. This object was of rare quality. The requirement to use it was to be level 20. This object granted the user 77 agility points, 35 stamina, and 32 spirit points. It had an ability called the Language of the Spirit Wind, granting the bearer the blessing of the Spirit Wind, increasing agility attribute by 35%. This ring was very good, but it was a shame that Xiaoya couldn't receive the bonus effect. However, it was still very useful for Lu Fan. The third and final item was a red cloak called Flames and Frost Cloak. This item was of legendary quality. The requirement to use it was to be level 20. It granted 112 stamina points, 79 spirit points, 56 strength points, and 54 agility points. It had an ability called Frost and Fire Enhancement, which reduced damage received from ice and fire elements by 3%, decreased negative effects caused by ice and fire enemies by 50%, and increased damage inflicted on ice and fire enemies by 30%. This ability could be used by both Lu Fan and Xiaoya. Lu Fan put the cape on his shoulder, the ring on his finger, and took the book in one hand. With the other hand, he took out the stone to return back to school. He slightly turned his head towards the book and with a smile thought it was time to go back, so he decided to temporarily remove Xiaoya to let her rest. Using the stone, Lu Fan created a portal and went to the surveillance room where all the teachers were. He closed his eyes and asked the principal if he could go home, also adding that he would be eagerly waiting for the results. Upon seeing Lu Fan, everyone was surprised. Director Bai approached him, looked at him with a proud gaze, and couldn't help but praise him for being impressive. Lu Fan was number 1 and the pride of the school. In the future, his photo would always be hung on their school's wall of fame as a celebrity. The director of First Middle School also approached Lu Fan, while on the other side, Shanghai remained silent. He approached Director Bai, turned his head towards him, and also praised Lu Fan. Then he explained to them that the Wall of Fame was filled with photos of heroes who had fought against monster invasions and died in battle. After explaining this, he told Director Bai that by doing this he would only attract curses. Upon hearing this, Director Bai turned his head towards him, began pointing at him and told him that he didn't care about all of this since Lu Fan had broken the record in the grand exam and his future was immeasurable. He also added that in any case, this grand exam had made Lu Fan stand out from the rest. While the tension between them was growing, Shanghai approached Lu Fan and with a serious look explained to him that even though this time he had mentally prepared himself to see the big exam, he still couldn't help but be surprised at how strong he was. Lu Fan put his emotions aside, started staring at Shanghai, and with a serious look reminded him that he had fulfilled the conditions. He also asked if now the princess of Taiki was not going to throw a tantrum again. He closed his eyes and with a smile, he asked him not to worry because he was going to fulfill his part of the agreement, adding that the master should soon receive the message. Upon hearing this, Lu Fan became somewhat confused and asked him which master he was referring to. Shanghai approached him, placed his hand on his chest, and asked him not to worry about it, as now he had to consider which educational institution to choose. Tiang Shong simply grabbed his cap and stood there silently listening. The four approached Lu Fan and explained to him that the top 10 academic institutions would be competing against each other to attract Lu Fan. Not only that, but wealthy merchants from the southern province would also take this opportunity to get close to him and establish a relationship. They advised him to be attentive to their intentions. While they were all busy talking, King Sheng put on his cap, turned his back to them, and started walking away. The director of the first middle school was very anxious to see where the dragon was, so he asked Lu Fan to call her immediately so that they could all see her with their own eyes. Director Bai asked him not to do it because if Xiaoya appeared, then she would destroy the school. According to the ranking table, Lu Fan was in first place with 1,200,099 points. Director Bai couldn't help but praise Lu Fan since this score was incredible. He also added that no one in the last 50 years had been able to break this record. At the same time, in the Dragon Realm in the far north, in an unexplored level 60 territory, there was a base amidst the snow. Inside the base sat a man with gray hair, who was watching recordings of Xiaoya fighting in the trial. After watching all the recordings, the man grabbed a bottle of wine, put it in his mouth, and started drinking. Several seconds later, he tightly held the bottle and placed it on the table. Then, he closed his eyes, sighed, and with a smile thought that this was very refreshing. He was the Marquis of Zhenbei called Tu Jing. He was sitting in his office. Next to him there was a laptop which had the recordings of Xiaoya. While he was distracted, someone started knocking on the door. Upon seeing this, he asked them to come in. A man entered Tu Jing's office. He was wearing a jacket and holding some files that contained some reports. He approached Tu Jing and apologized for bothering him, informing him that he had brought some reports. Tu Jing picked up the bottle of wine again, and with a serious look, he asked the man if he had found any evidence. The man placed the files on the table and explained that everything was in the files, adding that he could confirm that Ho's assumption about the student Qin Shanhai was correct. While Tu Jing was holding the bottle of wine, he pulled the chair closer to the table and remained silent while observing the files. These files contained information about the Princess Tiaki and her subordinates. The man explained to Tu Jing that through communication with Special Envoy Qiang Xing, Qin Shanhai deduced that Lord Ruan Chengfeng, a high-ranking official at Longdu, was colluding with the Jin family from Tazi Realm. According to the investigation, both Princess Jinju's studies abroad and taking Master Yulong were approved by Lord Ruan. Upon hearing this, Tu Jing placed the wine bottle on the table and began to tighten his fist, causing it to slowly start breaking. He couldn't help but think that Ren Chengfeng was a bastard. His subordinate, who had white hair, also added that the Jin family and Lord Ruan maintained a superficial relationship between the two countries. However, in private, Lord Ruan had granted many privileges to the Jin family and they had also given him many rewards in return. Upon learning this, Tu Jing clenched his teeth tightly and thought it was no wonder he had sent an envoy to arrest the Dragon Tamer master. As he thought this, he clenched his fist tightly, shattering the wine bottle into pieces. He became furious and started to stand up, thinking that Ren Chengfeng was an opportunist who was helping the little princess of Taiki do whatever she wanted in the Dragon Realm. Upon seeing that Tu Jing was starting to get angry, his subordinate took a few steps back and looked somewhat surprised. He stood up, extended his hand to the side, and with a serious look, gave the order to his subordinate to go and transmit the order to Ruan Chengfeng that he was withdrawing all his charges and powers. From now on, there would be no place for him in Longdu's top management. He ordered his subordinate to execute this order immediately. After saying this, he turned his head to the side, clenched his teeth tightly, and also added that if Ruan Chengfeng had any objections, then he could come and talk to him. As for the Jin family, if they tried to contact Ruan Chengfeng again, he asked his subordinate to send the Griffin team to greet them. Upon hearing this order, he responded with a understood. Tu Jing turned his back on him, began pointing at the door, closed his eyes, and asked him to wait as there was still one more thing left to do. He asked his subordinate to pay attention to which institution would choose the Dragon Master and ordered him to notify the school director immediately in order to provide resources for Lu Fan. Upon hearing this, his subordinate responded with a understood. Tu Jing put his hands on his hips, turned his head towards the window, and thought that the Dragon Realm had a legendary young man who truly brought joy to people. For him, Lu Fan was someone very interesting. He planned to find and meet the legendary young Dragon Master Lu Fan after finishing his task. In the realm of the north, the moon was giant and red in color. Tu Jing didn't know when he would be able to finish his task to go meet Lu Fan. At the same time, in the city, the princess went to a luxurious hotel. While she was sitting on her bed, someone called her and informed her that Ruan Chengfeng had been dismissed by the Marquis of the North. Upon hearing this news, she panicked. The person on the other end of the call asked her to calm down because they still had good news. While the princess was sitting on the bed with one hand resting on it and holding her phone with the other, she asked what good news they had, adding that without him, they wouldn't be able to catch the Dragon Master. The person on the other end of the call explained to the princess that she no longer needed to waste her valuable time on Lu Fan, as the day of the publication of the results of the big exam was near. They had discovered that besides Lu Fan from Zhonghai City, there was also another dragon tamer in Qingju City. Upon hearing this, the princess's expression changed drastically. She stopped being furious and became somewhat surprised. She couldn't help but smile. With a wicked look, she thought that this was good news. This time, she hoped that the other party would be someone with foresight. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.